dare to dream with stocks to become rich? Well, if the answer is yes, you're at the right place. Ace investor Basant Maheshwari has 3 decades of experience in equity investing with a history of identifying several multi-baggers. And today he shares his own experiences and his strategy for generating consistent long-term returns irrespective of where the market is going. In other words, how to become a thoughtful investor. Basant, today, of course, you're the co-founder of Basant Maheshwari Wealth Advisors. It's a registered portfolio management company. But, I want to rewind. I want to start at the very beginning. How did you get interested in the stock market?
So, Manvi, the thing is, unlike other disciplines, like for example, if you take to acting, you would say, I started acting at the age of 3 because I loved acting. And then suddenly you become a Kareena Kapoor or a Ranveer Singh or whatever. So if you take to cricket, you say, if you have Virat Kohli, you would say, I used to sleep with my cricket bat and my pads on since I was 3 years old or 4 years old. So that's again the passion that drives you to the game. Similarly, with other disciplines, maybe singing or running or whatever. But when it comes to the stock market, it's the lure of money. So as a very honest confession, passion follows the money. So everyone comes to the stock market to make money, and that's how it all started. Because as normal young people at the age of 18 or 19, suddenly to become passionate about investing looks a bit out of context. So if somebody says, I was passionate about investing since the age of 18, I mean, it looks a little far-fetched. Basically, I was greedy, not greedy in a negative sense. I wanted to make a lot of money, free money, easy money, money where you could buy something for 30 today and it hit 34 tomorrow. 11% return in 2 days. That's only available in the stock market. We don't realize the returns lure you to it, but ultimately you end up giving back what you have made in the initial phase. So when I started, it was more of this, where it was an effort to make a little more while you are studying, and that's how it all started in 1991.
So how old were you at that time when you started?
I was about 18.
You were about 18 years old, and you've just very honestly shared your motivation to start investing. A lot has changed in your outlook over the last 30 years, in the last 3 decades, and we're going to talk about that. But what was the first stock that you bought? I'm really curious.
It was a stock. The stock doesn't exist, and even the product that it used to make doesn't exist. It was called Hindustan Motors, and I bought it in 1991, September, October, thereabouts, at about 30-31. And why did I buy it? It was a 30 rupee stock. The probability of a 30 rupee stock going to 60 seemed a little higher at that time than if you would have bought a 400 rupee stock. So the common thing was, अरे 400 रुपये का शेयर कितना बढ़ेगा, 30 रुपया का लो, 2 रुपया का लो. So you go for lower priced stocks. So that is how it all started. And sometimes during those times there was no internet, there was no phone line communication, there was no media to tell you what's happening. And strangely, if I wanted to buy maybe a Hindustan Unilever or a Nestle, it wouldn't trade at the Calcutta Stock Exchange. It used to trade at the Bombay Stock Exchange. So most of us had brokers who could trade you stocks only from the Calcutta Stock Exchange. So people at Calcutta, because I was in Calcutta at that time, at that part of my life, so people in Calcutta would tell you, भाई Calcutta का शेयर है तो ले लेते हैं, Bombay का शेयर होगा तो I'll have to call up one more broker, which meant a 2% brokerage instead of a 1% brokerage. So the effort was to save as much on brokerage. Even the capital goes to zero, doesn't matter, because that's how you start. You start by saving brokerage at first. So that's how it all started.
Oh, to be fair, those were the times, when there were ambassador cars on the streets. So, although you started off by saying, that product doesn't exist anymore, the reality is in those days it was a fairly dominant product. Which brings me to the first multi-bagger stock in your portfolio. And that's when things really start getting exciting. So what was that first multi-bagger?
It came after 12 years. So that was 2003. So for the first 7, 8, 9 years, I didn't know what to do. It was more a game of buying something at 20 and hoping and praying to God that it hits 40 over the next few weeks. It never hit 40. So I remember the only stock where I made good money, big money, was a Master Plus stock. It was a mutual fund it was a mutual fund trading on the stock exchange. Unit Trust of India was the parent of that Master Plus. I think the NAV was 14. I bought it at 12 and a half because somebody told me there'll be a buyback at 14. So I thought we can make 1.5 rupee over the next 1 month. So I bought it at 12 and a half. The market moved up. The NAV moved to 16. The stock price went to 14. The buyback never happened. And I could sell off at 14. Beyond that, I don't think there were too many hits which I can boast of at this moment during that initial phase.
You know, we keep using the term multi-bagger, and today I'm really going to take this opportunity and say, Basant Maheshwari, okay, I know what multi-bagger is, you know what multi-bagger is, but there's somebody out there who's, you know, interested in getting into the stock market, and you have to give them a simple, digestible definition of the word multi-bagger.
So first, multi-bagger is not a stock that moves up 10% in a day. That's what we do in media. We talk about today's multi-baggers. We talk about multi-baggers in a day trade. So you don't get a multi-bagger in a day trade. You don't get a multi-bagger over a week. The ideal, so multi-bagger is also a definition which people would have for themselves. But for me, a stock which moves up 7 to 8 times over a period of 5 to 6 years is a multi-bagger in the true sense of the word. So what is the kind of a company that's going to give you 5 to 7 or 8 times over the next 5-7 years? First is there has to be growth. So when there is growth, the company becomes cheaper year by year. You have to start from a low valuation. So the price earnings ratio. So a low valuation, you start from a low PE, it goes to a high PE. So if a company has quadrupled earnings over a period of 6 years and the PE moves up from say 10 to 30, so PE moves up 3 times, the earnings go up 6 times, so 6 into 3, you've got an 18 bagger on your hand. Most of us either buy a low PE stock or thinking that the valuation would go up, but the valuation would never go up unless the stock shows you some earnings growth. Or you would buy a company that's already fully priced in. So in today's market, people ask me, multi-bagger kya hai? I said, kuch nahi hai. And they think that either he's lost the touch or he doesn't want to tell me something, because that's a fact. At this kind of a valuation, you cannot expect to get another Pantaloon which will go grow 40 times over the next 6 years, or a Page Industries or an iShare Motor or anything, because you're not starting from a low valuation base. So as we discussed, we would come to that, but low valuation would come to you after a scorching and a fierce bear market, which means you would have been down 60% already on your capital. So does the multi-bagger help because you've already been reduced to 40 from 100 and you're growing your capital on that 40? So there's nothing free in life. So you take away from somewhere and you have to give something somewhere else.
Okay, I'm going to pause there for a moment and I'm going to go back to the fact that for the first 12 years there was no multi-bagger in your life, which, basically leads me to the conclusion that patience, resilience, stamina, strength, conviction are all words that really must be in the vocabulary of an investor. Stubbornness.
There was no patience. There was nothing, because I remember I bought HDFC Bank at 35 because somebody said Bombay se khabar aaya 70 rupiya ho jayega.
Bombay se khabar aaya.
So when you're in Calcutta, if anybody says Bombay se khabar aaya hai, it seems, wow, this guy really knows something. And if you say Asansol se khabar aaya or Arunachal se aaya, this guy doesn't know anything. So even now when people call me, they say Bombay mein kya ho raha hai? So, Bombay mein kya ho raha hai? You're on Twitter, you figure out Bombay kya, you figure out Barcelona mein kya ho raha hai. So coming back to it, it was really stubbornness. I think I was more of an aimless arrow, if I can express myself quite candidly here. I didn't know what I was doing, but I wanted to do something. And I knew that the only way to get rich was through the stock market. Get rich quickly being the operative word. So for years and years, used to buy shares, sell them in the hope that this would go up, in the hope that somebody is giving us a tip. But it didn't really work through. So there are several reasons why it didn't work through, but it just didn't work through.
And in our conversations, we're going to be able to explore so many of your experiences, your themes, the evolution in your strategies. But aimless arrow then, if you had to use 2-3 words to describe yourself today, and I just want people who are watching to really understand that an aimless arrow can mature into something quite different, but it takes a 30-year journey.
This maturity doesn't happen on its own. You have to get success. And the first success will always be a stroke of luck. it can't be planned. At least from the stock market perspective, it has to be something where you bought a stock and then you hold on to it and it makes money, and then the entire thesis falls into place. So I think it's more of that. Once you start making money, then you know what has worked for you. And more important than that, in the markets, it's important to know what doesn't work for everyone. I mean, some people can have any style of functioning, and just because you cannot relate to it doesn't mean it's not going to work. But if you have never used that style to make money and you're doing it for the first time, then the logic of following that style doesn't exist. So what works for you, you keep doing the same thing again, and that's how you move ahead.
You've had 30 years in the equity markets, and I just want to know, because most of us, the first thing that we do is we got some money, we go buy a house. And I'll tell you very honestly, that gives me a great sense of security. So literally the first thing that I did when I had some capital was to go buy a home that I can call my own. Have you ever bought property?
No.
I find that shocking. I do not believe it. So you're going to have to say it loud and clear to me.
No, I've never bought a property.
But why?
I don't intend to, unless I'm at the fag end of my life and I know that this is the fag end. So if I die of an accident maybe next week, I don't think I'll die with a property. There's one ancestral home which we all have, so that's about it.
But why?
Initially, there wasn't enough money to buy a property.
But there was money to invest in the stock market.
That was always there, because I could see, if you look at it, no one gets rich buying gold. People get rich, then they buy gold. No one gets rich doing bank FDs. You become rich, then you do a bank FD. So I'm just trying to work the cause and effect relationship. Very few people get rich buying a property. Very few, not even 1% or 2%. So, but there are several people who get rich doing businesses. And a stock market is a passive form of doing a business. So if I rewind myself back, so for the initial phase, there was nothing to do and there was not enough money. Later on, once money started to come in, you set targets for yourself. I should have so much, X. I should have 10X, 100X. X could be any number, 1000X, whatever. Once you reach 50X, 70X, 100X, 200X, whatever, then you say, we can do it any day. How does it matter? So initially it's about not having enough. Once you have enough, it's just an excuse to tell you that I don't want to do this. But if I can give you an economic reason, what I have built over the years is, let's assume I'm working somewhere as an employee, I take home a salary, and then I pick up a property and do an EMI for 10 years, 15 years, whatever the EMI amount be. Logically, my salary income should be stronger than my EMI liability, responsibility.
Logically.
Otherwise, I would go bankrupt. If I'm not making enough from my salary, then that EMI cannot be repaid back.
Yeah.
That's the first part. The second part is, my boss, my employer, my owner has to pay me a little less than what I would recover for him in those 25 days in a month that I work for him.
Sure, because that's how he makes his margin.
That's how he would work. He would make his money, or else he would push me out the next month. So salary income is subordinate to business income. EMI is subordinate to salary income, which means business income should be tremendously more than EMIs or home. Now it's not my own thing, but it's for everyone else to understand what you want in life. If I want safety, I want the money under my mattress. If I want more safety, I want money to be in gold. But then I'll give you two more things. If you have money under your mattress and there's a demonetization being announced, there's a problem. If you have money in gold and you're asleep and somebody breaks through your back door and walks away with the gold, then also there's a problem. Everything in life comes with the risk element. So I always used to say there are some people who are so risk averse that look at the ceiling fan and say, I hope it doesn't fall down. So there are instances to look at it in this fashion, that we all define what we want in life. For me, it's always been about all or nothing. करना है तो बड़ा करो, नहीं तो मत करो. And it's not everyone's responsibility. It's not expected out of everyone to be thinking big all the time, because then if everybody has got all the cash in the world, it means either you're a Zimbabwe or a Venezuela. So the mechanics of capitalism decides that only a few people should think big. A good proportion of that few people who thought big would go bankrupt, and it's fine to go bankrupt. It's fine to go bankrupt. In India, we look at bankruptcy in a sense.
There's a stigma associated with
They
it.
say, "Ye to diwala nikal diya." Good enough. In America, they'd say, "Just didn't work out. Let me see what I can do next." We've still not come to terms with keeping the past aside and moving forward. I think that's the basic difference where the country is. So that's how it is.